we've spoke to other big design houses where they're like, yeah, we've got this design of yours, and they're using Hot Wheels to sort of inspire some of the real car design.
That's fun.
Isn't it mad though? I mean, like it's come full circle where we're
Yeah.
inspired by the automotive world, but we've now got such a talented bunch of designers that they're creating stuff that's inspiring the car design world that they were inspired by.
Hi everyone, welcome to Car Chat Podcast. I'm Sam Moores, and with me today I have Craig Callum. Hello.
Hey, hi.
Hi, welcome. Can you tell the listeners a sort of little short summary of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Craig Callum, and I am the Senior Design Manager at Hot Wheels for all of the little die-cast cars that you see out there.
Yeah, right. So where did this sort of journey begin for you, sort of cars and whatnot?
Right at the beginning. I mean, I was 5 and I decided I wanted to be a car designer. I was always into cars as a kid. I mean, like most kids are, I think. But it was 5 years old that I was just drawing cars, and I was, drawing a lot of different things, but drawing cars. And my mum said, that's a job. Like, people do design cars. And I was like, that sounds amazing. Well, I can just do this for the rest of my life. So I was like, I'm going to do that then, obviously. So I decided to be a car designer. And there was a wobble. Jurassic Park came out, and I was like, actually, dinosaurs are pretty cool. Maybe I could be an archaeologist. But it turns out that archaeologists aren't like dealing with actual dinosaurs. They're mainly actually digging up pots and things like that. So I was like, okay, now I'll go back to the car design thing, and the car design's what I want to do.
They're not working on like Lost Island.
Yeah, and I geared everything towards that from there. So it was, everything at school. It made me study hard because I knew what I wanted to do. And my mum was very clever at twisting it, So it was like, oh, if you want to be a car designer, you've got to do well at maths. It was all that sort of thing. And genuinely, obviously, I did, and that did help everything along the way. But went to university, studied automotive design, and then became a car designer, and then found that cars are way too serious. So I wanted to do toy cars. I got less serious as I got older.
That's a good way to go, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
You don't want to get more serious. That's not a good thing. Okay, so when you were sort of pitching this, you're like, I want to be a car designer.
Yeah.
At that point, did you know, presumably you had no idea what that like loosely actually entailed? So,
well, I assumed it entailed just driving and drawing cars all day. That's what I just wanted to draw cars all day. So that was really what it was about for me. So as I got older and older, discovered more and more about what it takes to be a car designer, that, you had to have this design thinking. And I think I was already thinking that way anyway. I used to sit on the floor at home, and my mum had these like architectural interior design books, things like that. And I'd pull them out and I'd just study them for ages about, how you should place things in certain things, because that's how people work. And you think about how people live and move through a space. And it was that kind of made me think, oh, that's something that someone's thought about and put into action. And that's what car design's about too. There was a lot of discovering it along the way. I mean, it's been a long time that I've been building up to it. So worked out all the little things that I needed to know. Did, art classes very early on so that I could get my painting and drawing skills up there. And I became really frustrated with art classes. I went to an adult art class when I was about 11, 12, I think. And much to the dismay of some of the older guys there, because they couldn't do the naked life drawing exercises anymore because this kid was coming along. And then the dismay of some others, because obviously then they were like, wait, this kid is, after a few months there, drawing, painting better than us. And so it was an interesting one. But it was there that I sort of really discovered I didn't like drawing real things either.
Okay.
So painting from life, still life and things like that was just too easy. I was like, well, it's there. Like, where's the challenge? I'm just kind of drawing something that exists. I'm copying life and putting it onto a piece of paper. Wanted to create these things in my head and draw in a way that I could show these ideas to someone. Which now, that is car design. You've got something in your head and you've got to translate that to an engineer or a sculptor or a clay modeler, and they've got to be able to understand the shapes that you're thinking about and the forms that you're trying to create.
And do you find this sort of thinking of how, well, one, just pure design of like looking around and going, oh, that's not that well designed, that could be slightly better, has this like infected the rest of your life?
Yeah, being a designer is great, but it really sucks because you're like, I could fix this and I could do this. And you find, you're a perfectionist in the world, but not necessarily like, because I'm not a perfectionist, but I certainly want design to be perfect. And so you're constantly trying to repair and fix things. And it's one of the fun things. I mean, getting way ahead of us, but some of the projects we're doing at Hot Wheels where we're taking cars that are maybe not considered beautiful and then customizing them and bringing them back out. So we just did the Pontiac Aztec with this kind of wild GT3 flares and big Cosworth whale tail on the back. And it's about that, your imagination runs wild with this stuff. So even if it's something that's, I wouldn't have done it that way, there's other things where you're like, I wonder what if we did this, and you're just imagining and creating things. I think that's a big part of who I am though as well, because, I love cars. I love classic cars, modified cars, all of them. And so people are like, oh, so you love working on cars? I'm like, no. I absolutely, like, it's the worst thing ever for me to work on a car. It's a necessity. I don't have the money to pay a whole team of mechanics to be doing this.
Yeah.
But imagining what it could be is and I think that's for a lot of people, but as a designer, for me, it's like, oh, what can I create from this bucket of bolts and big tub of rust? So it's painful because then you have to then go through the actual practical side of building it. And I know for some people that's what they love, but for me, it's a necessary evil.
Yeah. I find sometimes like my wife will be driving somewhere and she'll be like, oh yeah, do you want to drive? And I'm like, no. She's like, but you love driving. I'm like, no. I like driving in fun situations.
Yeah.
I do not like sitting on a motorway for 6 hours. No. I'd rather be in the back. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Not interested in
you're
the
in the
slightest.
back. You're in the back of the car.
If I could get in the back, I would get in the back.
Just your wife just up the front driving
exactly.
Miss Daisy.
Little chauffeur. Perfect situation. So, well, okay. With Hot Wheels, are all of them, I guess the answer is no, based on what you've said. But are they, I thought a large chunk are based on real cars.
Yep.
But not all.
Chunk, but not all. No, we have a lot of fun. There's a lot of fantasy models, Hot Wheels originals, where we create our own designs based on reality, but we sort of push it a little bit. We have full fantasy vehicles where we've got cars with functions. We've got cake cars. My first car was called, my first design for Hot Wheels was called the Mo Stash, which is like a speedster sort of land speed racing kind of hot rod type thing with a comb that flicks out in the middle that's in the shape of a mustache. We're probably split, I don't know what we're split, probably 70-30, 60-40, something like that between real cars and completely fantasy vehicles. But then also we get to have a lot of fun with the real cars too. I mean, some of the brands are very open to us taking those cars and customizing them. I mean, with the Aztec, Pontiac were very kind to let me take massive liberties with that car. And so we do a lot of custom work too on the cars that do already exist. So in the end, the Hot Wheels you might see on shelf doesn't exist. Our latest project with Aston Martin, we collaborated with them to create a DB4 salt flat racer. So if Aston Martin in the 60s had taken the DB4 to, let's say, Bonneville salt flats, what would that look like? And we worked with the Aston Martin design team to create that. And so, actually, we have some licensed replica style cars, but they're still even in a Hot Wheels sort of appearance. We don't necessarily replicate them perfectly. We want to make them the most exciting vehicle we can for kids. I think that's that's what Hot Wheels is. It's about inspiring and exciting these kids with these vehicles.
And do you, like, let's say on a project like that, do you build a full-size car?
I'm yeah. No. I really want to. I think the DB4 Salt Flat Racer is just I mean, it's crazy. It's so cool. It's such a sculptural piece as well. So I'm still knocking on Aston's door every day, and I'm like, we should build it, right? We're going to build it. Are we going to build it? So yeah, no, who knows?
Yeah.
We have a garage of legends where we do have a lot of these vehicles in full size. I think we've got about 20 vehicles in the garage now. The garage of legends being, we have Bone Shaker, Twin Mill, some of our iconic original designs, and then we have some of these other licensed vehicles too. So yeah, there are one-to-one Hot Wheels. And it's funny because then when you get them up to that scale, you're like, oh, okay, no, this is wild.
Yeah.
When we're drawing them and you're looking at them on the screen, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. And then, when you think about it, you're like, oh, no, that wing would be, 4 foot long or whatever. So
yeah, that's funny how stuff in different scale does look very different.
Yeah, we have to. I mean, it's a big challenge for what we do because it can look kind of either jelly mold, like a jelly mold. It could look too spiky, thin, whatever. So we have to play with that a lot. Even with cars that are already very well refined in real life, when we get them down to scale, it's a different matter.
Just most stuff, if you just take most of the general supercar, whatever, shrink it down, looks all right, or does
I'd say so. I mean, there's still it's all right-ish, but they tend to look a bit narrow, so we need to we normally tweak the width a little bit. Our wheels and tires are obviously, we scale them up a lot, because if you get it down to that scale, it doesn't work. Because it's weird how the eye works. You focus on things and you focus on the wheels, and so I think when it's that small, they end up very small.
It's like show launch cars. I don't know whether that's the right name for them, but when you historically go to like Geneva and concept cars and stuff like that, or when Ferrari's released a new something or other and you see the online reveal and you're like, there's about 300 kilos in the back and the front of that car if you compare it to the standard thing that hits the street.
Yeah, normally the wheels are like 2 inches bigger than they're going to be.
Yeah.
And even then, I think we're getting to a point now, though. I feel like we're getting to a point now where like the cars on the road have 21-inch wheels now. I mean,
they do.
I remember as a student designing cars, and like we weren't really allowed to go beyond 19, 20 inches of wheel, because that would be ludicrous. No one would have that.
That would have spinners on it.
Yeah, exactly. Now, like that's just Honda Civics are running around on 19s or whatever. Well, but.
Yeah. What was studying car design like?
It was great. It was tough. Like, it was really hard. And university's difficult for everyone, I think. And sort of, it's a big change in your life. I went there with not very much, so I had to work really hard to earn money as well. So it was kind of difficult to get the studies in and work all that out. But then you're studying with all these. It was the first time I've come across people that had the same enthusiasm for the same thing as me. I grew up in the countryside, surrounded by people whose parents were in finance or banking or whatever, and sort of these normal office jobs, and no one else wanted to do what I do. I mean, there was a couple of artists, and they were like crazy artists with wild hair, and they love paint and all that sort of thing, and I guess I side with them. That's kind of where I connected best. But what I do is so vastly different to that it was difficult to kind of direct myself during that time at high school. So when I got to university and was studying car design, it was like, oh, cool. Okay, I'm not a weirdo. Well, I am, but I'm not that weird.
I'm now amongst my people.
Yeah, exactly. I found my people. But even then, it's such a diverse group of people. But yeah, so it was great because I was discovering things that just I couldn't discover. I mean, and this was very early internet days as well. I think I had internet at home for maybe 1 year before I went to university. And so it was kind of me looking for books and finding out information, phoning people and just asking stuff. And then I got to university, and I mean, it was right at that time, internet started coming on, and people coming with ideas and bringing books in and talking about these designers and this and that. And I was like, wow, okay, this is huge. Like, this is so much more than I imagined. I thought I'd just draw cars and there we go. But it was pretty, eye-opening arriving. And I went to Coventry, so I arrived in Coventry, and I came from the countryside, and so it was this big rough city with all these people that are super enthusiastic about the same thing as me. It was a lot.
Yeah. And I guess unlike a lot of courses, it's like studying car design, as you say, it's really specific. You've put it within the automotive niche straight away, and then it's design. Whereas I guess most courses are just like art or, geography or whatever it is. They're like the full broad spectrum of everyone. Whereas if you said, are you into cars?
They do it quite well at Coventry, though, where they have you sort of do industrial product design with an automotive specialization. So if you're one of the car guys, you do the automotive bit of industrial product design. So you're learning to be a product designer. But then in the end, those that came out with automotive design, there wasn't many of us. It was like 5. And I think it was like 30 did transport design, and 5 came out with automotive design. Or something like that, I don't know the numbers. But
what were the other things that people were like? What are the other transport splits? Is it like trains, planes?
There's also the wider transport system as well, right? So I think it's a whole thing like that. But yeah, trains, boats, planes. There's a lot of aerospace interior design is constantly being worked on and improved and invested in, because I mean, it's a huge space where you're trying to fit so many people in comfortably. They want luxury, but they want cheap flight, but they want to get there. There's a lot of regulations in there, so that's a huge industry for transport designers.
Were you nearly pulled in a different direction once you started digging into this stuff?
No. I think at that point I was like, cars are where it's at, and I never really swayed from that at all. Looking back now, I think I should have been an architect, because then I could have made lots of money and
then just
all the cars I love. Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyone who's like, oh, I really love cars, I want to be a car designer. I was like, stop. Do you really love cars and you want cars? Yeah. If so, don't be a car designer. Yes. I'm surrounded by them and it's great. I love it, but it would be nice to drive one of them home and enjoy them outside of work sometimes.
Yeah, there's definitely a strong case for that in a lot of industries. Like I love skiing, was a ski instructor for a while, which was like cool. But then I realized, like, at one point in time when I was working in New Zealand, I wasn't getting paid very much. And I was teaching like, I don't know, a 10-year-old to go and ski. Like, I'm not doing the stuff that I really want to do.
Yeah, precisely.
Maybe I should go
see you as a ski instructor, though, actually. I see it now. Yeah.
Maybe I should do something else, earn some money, and then just go on holiday. Or is it the same in cars? You see it all the time. They do something that earns a lot of money.
I'm not complaining, because the thing is, I'm not entirely sure there is anything else I would want to do. Maybe architecture. I think that would be fun. But that's the designer in me still. So
yeah, and you're also at that point, if you're going, I love this thing, so I should do something else so that I can enjoy this thing. It's like you're sort of trading your soul a little bit, aren't you?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So you studied car design at Coventry, and then where did you go?
So the timing, and this ages me a little bit, but the timing of that, my internship, I hadn't, because we do a 4-year course, third year's an internship. My internship was supposed to be It was the first people that came in, and everyone's getting ready. They come in and they interview for internships, and everyone's got their portfolios ready, and they all go up to a room and they get interviewed. The first team that came in was, for me, the most exciting one, and it doesn't really work now, but it was MG Rover. And MG Rover for me at that time was just like, they were great. They were really good. They were good. It's so hard to explain that to people now about MG Rover, but MG Rover was kind of the automotive design house I wanted to be part of. It was headed at the time by Peter Stevens, who's a friend of mine, who wasn't a friend at the time. I should say I got this on merit. But they were the first people came in and they interviewed, and I got offered an internship, and I was like, great, this is easy, internship done. So I was signed up, and I think it was, maybe 3 months before I was due to start, because everyone else had to interview, and then it was the summer holidays, and so I had this internship lined up. And then it comes to like the week, I think it was 3 days before I was due to start my internship, and MG Rover pops up on the news about how it's possibly not in the best of places financially. And then one day before my internship, I get a call from the head of design there, and it's like, maybe don't come over here yet. Don't pack your stuff. Like, it may not be the best place to be right now. He's like, whatever happens, we'll work something out. But and then the next day it was like, bankrupt, done. I was like, well, now what do I do? And fortunately for me, so I went back to Coventry, went back to sort of the university, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I've got no internship. It was lined up to start. And the last people to come in was still the last company to come in and interview for internships. And that was Gibbs Automotive. And Gibbs did the Aquada, which was a car that turned into a boat. So it folds up its wheels, turns into a boat. So the Gibbs Aquada, they were the last people to come into the university and interview. And so I interviewed for that internship, got it, and started work there. And so I got the first and the last internships.
I remember this thing.
Yeah, right? It looks a bit like a Mazda MX-5 with...
Yeah, and the wheels, like they sort of like tucked in. Like
exactly.
Rolled in.
So I started internship for them. And I did a year's internship for them. At the time when I started, they were developing a quad bike that turned into a jet ski. So I sort of helped them with the design on that. I mean, they're very engineering. There's very little styling that you can do with what they're doing.
Yeah.
So we designed a quad ski. So did the quad ski for them, which was, I think, made famous by Jeremy Clarkson in the end, who raced, I think he raced Hammond in an Alpha, and he was on the quad ski at Lake Como, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
So designed that for them, and then straight out of university, I was not sure what to do. I was thinking about maybe going to do a master's at the Royal College of Arts, but that obviously requires more money. And as I said before, I was struggling my way through university. So, but then they came up to me and they offered me a job. So I went to work for Gibbs Automotive straight out of university. So yeah, graduated, went straight into a job, which is a dream scenario. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, working for a company like that, it was like there was two of us, two designers, and we just had fun, and we were styling bits and pieces that the engineering team came up with. So that's where I started out.
See, getting an internship at a company like that.
Yeah.
You turn up and they're like, oh yeah, well, we've only got one design guy, so you're now the other design guy.
It was a bit like that, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying, there's nothing I could do about it, and say I regret it, but there's nothing I could do about it. But it wasn't a normal experience. I think being part of a bigger design team is always helpful. I think it's so good for your development. So how much did I develop? There's a lot of self-driven, development that happened there. But yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
It's quite a fun. It's quite a fun project.
Yeah, and you don't really get that kind of freedom either. If I'd have gone to one of the big players like Ford or someone like that, then I'd have got opportunities to see the design process properly, perhaps, but also I'd have been kind of lost in a crowd of people doing the same thing. So at least I feel like I got this kind of development of my own, and that was great. But yeah, it was an interesting one.
So and then you moved on from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from there I got a couple of consultancy. I joined a design consultancy and did a few jobs for consultancies. There's a few of those within the UK that, designing for other brands, and I think while I was there, we were working on the Bugatti. What was the four-door Bugatti called? But the four-door Bugatti that never became a thing.
The thing, yeah.
I did a few Chrysler headlights and things like that, like little facelifts and things like that. And then a friend of mine had just started at Renault Trucks in France and said, "I'm at Renault Trucks. It's great. Come here." I was like, "Okay." So I went to Renault Trucks in France, and it was great. I mean, it was amazing. It was a good cross between car design and product design at Renault, because you're not necessarily styling it, to sell it. You're styling and making sure this design functions perfectly for drivers. It's interesting because you're designing for the person that probably hasn't bought the vehicle. It's very different to a car.
Yeah. And from a purchasing point of view, it's a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, really the buyers of those vehicles aren't even going to they won't even look at an image of it. And that's not to say we should forget about what it looks like, because other people are looking at it. But yeah, they're literally, what's the aerodynamics, what's the miles per gallon? And that's really all they care about. But you're designing for this kind of main user, but not buyer. And yeah, it's very interesting dynamic for that. But but it was great. A lot of product design. So you're thinking about, how a driver works, lives, travels in this one vehicle, and what do you do to make sure that's as good as possible for them?
What's in a Renault truck for the driver? Like, I don't really know what's in the front of a cab. Like,
yeah, no, that's the other thing, of course. So I've designed a whole bunch of stuff that I don't think I've ever seen it in real life. I've never seen it.
What is in there? What do they have? Do they have a bed?
And so I was designing, things like fold-out beds, pull-out ladders so they could get to a bunk, storage units, and then also all the usual. You still have a dashboard and door cards and things like that. But there's so much going on in those trucks because they live and work and sleep and everything in those. So you have to consider all those touch points. So yeah, it does all that, but never saw it in real life.
There must be a big truck modification scene, like inside.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, the accessories that they put on these cars is next level. I mean, that was one of the eye openers for me as well. Was we went, and whether it was good or not, but we went on trips to kind of research what these drivers were doing with their vehicles, and you see it, and it's kind of scary. There's some of them, they'll have ratchet straps and chains across the doors so they can't be opened at all. And they'll have like a clip for their baseball bat to go next to the door. It's like, oh, this is a different world. Like,
jeez.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we can consider all of this stuff, but they'll work it out afterwards. And then also what they put on the dash, sometimes you're like, how do they see? They've got like microwave, TV, got all on the dashboard, like on
the
top.
Dashboard. Is that because it's like a big table, basically?
Yeah, I think so. Is the best space for it. So, we have to consider all that. It's like, okay, well, how can we make that easier for them so that they're not also risking everyone on the road's life at the same time? So, considering all that stuff.
I remember, I don't know why, thinking about dashboards, it brings back to sort of slight memory of my childhood of people putting CDs on their dashes because it would possibly mess with the radar.
Yeah. Did it though? I wonder if it was true.
I bet it didn't. It didn't.
No.
Unlike, what is it, 4D plates? Why are they called 4D? I don't know why they're called 4D. But the number plates that stick out.
Yeah.
They're very difficult to read by cameras.
Oh, are they? Oh, interesting. Is that why everyone's doing it? Because it doesn't look good. So.
Oh, it looks horrific.
It's so bad. I
absolutely hate it.
I mean, yeah.
You see it on. So I'm in London, and you see it on cars that I wouldn't expect to have. For me, the image of someone with a 4D plate might be like a heavily modified Audi or something. But you see it on just like S-Class Uber drivers. And then I was like, no, there's something in this. And apparently they don't get read by congestion charging cameras and things like that.
Oh, clever.
So it's a swizz.
Interesting. I mean, I criticize it, but my 1974 Mini has 3D plates. I mean, they're just going back to that, right? So because they have the pressed, well, not pressed. Mine are actually like plastic digits riveted on from the 70s.
They don't look the same though. They don't look as rubbish for some reason.
I think there's a price difference as well, perhaps, is the culprit.
Or it's the fact that they're not like solid.
They're just
90 degrees.
Yeah, they just don't look right, do they?
And they're normally in some horrific font with some dodgy spacing.
I remember as a kid, the cool cars were the ones with like italic fonts, and that was the 4D of its time, I think.
Yeah,
almost like Comic Sans, slightly italic. That was
yeah. Some weird trends in number plate lettering, all of which are illegal. Apart from your heritage ones, I think they're probably all right.
I think mine's okay. Well, it's illegal out here because it's British, but anyway.
There we go. So, okay, where did you go next?
I got really... So, I mean, at this point, it's only... And this is to say I'm not complaining about my situation because I was, 3 years into my career, let's say. So 3 years out of university, 3 years, maybe 4 years into my career as a automotive designer. I was exhausted. Like, I just run out of steam because, I mean, I was 5 when I decided I wanted to do this. And I'm not saying like I was working every day to become a car designer, but certainly I didn't stop. There was no year out. There was no traveling. It was like, next thing. Okay, yeah. What do I need to do? What's the next thing I need to do to become a automotive designer? And then became one. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm like, I just kind of hit a wall. And I felt like also the design studio didn't work for me. It was competitive, which I love. I love a bit of competition, but it was competitive in a way I didn't feel was very like productive. It wasn't. It just didn't work for me. And I think because it was sort of, you have to win the design. So, you have to design, everyone designs for a project. You have to win that project by being the best design, and that's the direction we're going to go. And I just felt there was a little bit of negativity to that. So it wasn't necessarily, oh, theirs is great. It was more like, no, you shouldn't choose theirs because mine's better. And it just became, it wasn't working for me. So I quit, and I was like, I can't do this. So I left Renault. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? I've wanted to be a car designer since I was 5. I have no idea what to do. And the only other thing I've done other than drawing cars was ride mountain bikes. So I went to the Alps and I went downhill mountain biking. I was like, I'm going to take a 3-week holiday, decide what I want to do. So 3 months later, because the holiday extended somewhat. I ended up spending 3 months mountain biking. I got to the end of that and I'm like, I'm still not sure what to do. Like, this has been, my whole life has been geared towards this. And my friends are like, well, if you like mountain biking, you'll love snowboarding. I was like, I probably would love snowboarding. I have always wanted to do it. So I stayed and I went snowboarding. And then it was 3 years later that I was like, yeah, I should definitely get a job now. Because it was, but and in that time I'd been doing other things. I'd been illustrating, I'd been painting skateboards, I'd been all sorts of other things, and keeping my portfolio up to date. And then a friend of mine, I just got a random phone call, and on the other end of the phone, hi, this is Oliver from Lego. I've seen your portfolio. Would you be interested in doing some work for us? And I was like, Lego, wow, that's amazing. I used to play with Lego as a kid. I mean, Lego was responsible for me becoming a designer because it allowed me to play and it allowed me to build what I had in my head in a way that I hadn't been able to do before. Rather than playing with toys that were designed for me, I could design stuff. And I was like, yeah, but the snow season's about to start. Well, you can do it from there. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I freelanced for Lego for about a year. From the Alps.
Nice.
So I know. Honestly, I would snowboard all day, and then I would get down off the mountain, go back home, and start designing Lego. I mean, it was pretty crazy. And I didn't ever once take that for granted. Every single day I would come home and I would start working, and I was like, I genuinely probably the only person that has had this luxury before. I mean, it was absolutely amazing.
That's like the ultimate ski bum job, like an actual job.
It was, yeah. Well, the problem is, though, of course, you're surrounded by actual ski bums who are not working in the evenings. So it wasn't the easiest thing. But after a year, that project came to an end. So it was a freelance project, and it was for Lego Mindstorms, which is this robotic, clever, technology-driven Lego sets. So I finished that project and applied for a permanent job because I was like, Lego's amazing. I didn't even realize that people designed Lego, so I should probably go and do that. So I applied for a permanent job and moved to Denmark and started working for them after that, and stopped snowboarding.
Did you have to? I guess you had to move to Denmark. Was there any option of being a bit location variable?
I thought of every possible avenue that could work out where I stay snowboarding every day, but no, it's reality does bite sometimes. And the job I had as a freelancer is fine, but of course, as a contractor, that's fine. But moving to a permanent role, I had to be there on site, especially with Lego. You're building a lot all the time. You're designing. One thing's designing by hand, but you're designing in bricks. You're designing a product that requires that physical input. So yeah, there was no question there. I had to be there.
How does something in Lego get designed? Because I can't believe you literally just grab a pile of bricks and build it. Like,
to some extent, you do just grab a pile of bricks and start building it. But there's a lot of stories behind. Every Lego set is actually a story in a box that you're building. So that story, you've got to develop that story. You've got to think about what supports that story and go from there. So, and then you have to build it. So then you do grab a bunch of bricks and you put something together. And once you've been there a long time as well, you're almost thinking in bricks. You're thinking about how I can make this with these, and you start to understand the bricks in it. You've seen the Lego movie, right? Where it's like,
yeah.
But it is that there was there's one of the things when you start a Lego, there's like, how long is it until you have your first dream in Lego? You're just dreaming in bricks, and it happens. And you're like, I had my first Lego dream.
That is funny.
You do pretty much build like that. You might sketch a little bit. I mean, especially for the lines I worked on, created Speed Champions, and so it was very much cars. I didn't go far from what I like, building cars out of Lego, and there you might sketch to try and get an idea of how it could work in bricks. But normally it is much easier to just work in bricks and build in bricks.
And then as the designer, I'm interested how a project like that comes about. Like, say something like, I'm going to say Speed Champions. Weirdly, I didn't know you had any affiliation with Lego until yesterday.
Right. Okay.
Day before. I built a Speed Champions kit for my toddler. It was the 512 Ferrari.
Yes. Yeah.
And I've also done a few other ones. They're like, had them around, but he loves playing with them.
Yeah.
Although, and that one, the 512, had an interesting, it was like, every now and then I do some Lego occasionally and whatever, and you see like, that's a really neat way of using some quite simple structures to create an interesting shape, and they have an interesting like headlight on the front.
Yeah, the Speed Champions line's great for that. I mean, like, because it's a smaller scale and you're trying to build something very specific in its design. I mean, there's a lot of Lego sets that is fantasy based, and so it's easy. I'm not writing off designers' jobs at Lego at all, but it's a simpler task to create something if you have a little bit of creative freedom around the form. But Speed Champions was always that line where, well, we know what a McLaren F1 looks like, so we've got to make it look like a McLaren F1. And so you have to be creative with the bricks, and seeing how the designers worked on that, and some of my designers and the team there just came up with these solutions to creating a certain angle or bringing this into the right shape and so on. It was amazing. I mean, they're so talented, and came up with such great ways of doing that. Because if you don't do that, there's a certain amount, you can rely on a car fan looking at something that looks a bit like a McLaren F1
Yeah.
and saying, yeah, that's the McLaren F1. But if it doesn't look quite right, then you're instantly like, nope, it's not right. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure you're focusing on the right icons and present those and those alone, and then hope that the brain fills in the rest.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I look at them, and the Lego ones, I mean, they're a lot further away than a Hot Wheels or something from the sort of reality. But I do look at them and go, yeah, they are the thing. Like, you guys, they're not 100% correct, but ultimately they're made out of bricks.
I mean, as long as someone on the street couldn't build it better, I think that you've done the best job you can. So as long as someone can't pick up a bunch of bricks and do it better, that's the closest you can get with Lego bricks.
Do you want a job?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there is that.
No. And then, but like a project like that, Speed Champions, I guess Lego has worked with all of these companies before?
They had a long time before, but when I arrived at Lego, they weren't currently doing any automotive brands. They actually just killed off a bunch of their licensed vehicles. And I was like, damn it, like I came at the wrong time. It had been a few years since they'd done a Ferrari, for example. It's like, oh, that sucks. So I did a year working on Ninjas, and then with Ninjago, but every year I was just presenting every time we have, and they're quite good. They bring in, you're allowed as a designer to sort of bring in stuff for ideas for future product lines. And every time it'd be like, we need to do cars, we need to do cars, we need to do cars, like real licensed cars. And so worked with a few other designers who were also, there's a few car people there. And so we put together kind of, okay, if we were going to do cars, what does that look like? How do we get these brands on board again? Having previously worked with them. And so we developed Speed Champions, smaller scale. We're getting, because at some point as a kid, you start to realize that's a Ferrari, that's a Porsche. Yeah. I mean, and there's some kids of car guys that know that straight away from birth, I think. But but even as a normal kid, you start to a Ferrari and a Porsche and a Lamborghini and so on. And so I was like, brands they have a relevance to kids at a certain age, and actually the age lined up perfectly with the age that kids are sort of dropping out of Lego. So how can we, it's about retaining kids in Lego, really. And so Speed Champions was perfect, because they're like, well, we can pick up and we can, bring those kids back into Lego. We can give them a reason to still be building, still creating. And then also adults love Lego and cars. So it was kind of no brainer, really. I mean, it still took a few years to convince them. I think it was 2 or 3 years before the big bosses were like, fine, you can have your car project or whatever. And so we started Speed Champions, and we started with Ferrari, Porsche, and McLaren, I think, and then went from there, and it's grown and grown. I mean, now I didn't expect it to still go. I think they gave me 1 year to let's see how it is after a year, and then 2 years, and now it's been, I mean, I don't know how long it's been going, but maybe 12 years now for Speed Champions, something like that.
Yeah,
it's mad.
It's crazy, and it is one of those things. Like, I liked Lego as a kid. I like cars. And I have bought some Speed Champion sets, and I've also bought some. I bought a couple of Lego Technics at the beginning of lockdown.
Yep.
Built one. I built the RSR, and then bought another few, and then had a kid, and was like, "No, never going to be able to build these ever again." You can't leave tiny pieces around the house.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I don't have any Lego sets anymore, but I think I kind of got my fill of them. I do have everything I created, like but they're all in a box in the UK somewhere. Everything that I designed while I was there is stored away.
One of, or whatever, yeah.
Yeah. But it's been a little while now.
It's funny how getting like adults back, and I think I was around at a friend's house recently, and his wife was having a go at him because he'd built some Lego.
Yeah.
And she's just like taking the piss. I'm like, what's wrong with that? It's like a great activity. It's like, like 1-2 hours or whatever, a couple of hours of fun. You end up with a little thing, whatever. You might get rid of it. Doesn't matter.
it's really weird because it's not weird, it's totally normal. But it's so strange for me to look at that now, because I know when I started at Lego, adult fans of Lego were like the nerds that built
Yeah.
Lego as an adult. And so we had AFOLs, and everyone was like, the AFOLs, they're the for want of a better word, the nerds that build all this exciting stuff. But really, adults buying Lego was only them. It wasn't necessarily everyone at home and everyone. But now the toy industry in general, I mean, we see it at Hot Wheels, and it's definitely Lego's business now, is that adults are the main consumer. They're the ones buying the most and spending the most amount of money on Lego for themselves.
Yeah.
It's completely transformed. But I think it's because we're all like my age, and I grew up with Lego, and we want to try and be kids again. And so I get it. Before that, we didn't have that generation. Like the generation before that, the Lego bricks were, because they've been around forever, but they were okay, but they weren't that level. And so I think now we're seeing the generations come in that it's such a like brand for them. It's this full awareness of the brand and what it can do.
Yeah. And all these like interesting licensing tie-ins, whether it's Star Wars or whatever, it's like tying into all of the nostalgia of when you were a kid and you can build this massive kit. Like, I went into a Lego shop recently, and some of the Lego is branded 18 plus.
Yeah.
What is that about?
It's not a toy.
Like, is it branded 18 plus because the people that are coming in aged 40 and buying it go, yeah, that's 18 plus. They must feel better because this is just for adults.
It's another world, but the whole toy industry is going that way because we grew up with toys that are nostalgic. We do have a nostalgia for them that you would have seen in previous generations, but we didn't sort of notice it. But like wooden toys they're highly collectible later in life, and spinning tops were highly collectible later in life, and so it's just our nostalgic toy is these sort of is Lego, is Barbie, is Hot Wheels, and so it's just they're still going. Whereas previously, the generations, by the time they were looking for nostalgic toys, they're in a vintage toy shop, and the company is gone. Like, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, and there aren't current modern versions of those. Like, if someone's made a handmade wooden toy or whatever, it's not the same as, I liked Lego when I was a kid. Now I can go and buy the latest whatever, or Hot Wheels. Oh, there's a new Porsche that's come out. I can buy a little Porsche Hot Wheels car of that. Like, sick.
Yeah, you still get that nostalgic boost, but you've bought something new in the shop, and it's just possible now because the brands are still existing. Whereas, that wasn't possible before.
So you were at Lego for a while.
9 years.
And then what was your favorite project to work on?
I mean, Speed Champions. I mean,
obviously.
There was most of my career there as well, and it was kind of like my pet project. So, to be able to do that and to create something like that was amazing. I mean, Lego is very rewarding. It's a very rewarding job anyway, because you get to see directly the impact your product is having, because you see kids out there playing with it. You see it on the shelves in the shops. You have direct connection with it, which I didn't get from the automotive industry, where I designed an interior for a truck, let's say, and I've never seen it because it goes out there and disappears. You get a very direct kind of feedback. You get you get to see it and rewarded for that. I mean, there's so many highlights. So I got to go to Le Mans with Ford, and we did the Le Mans GT race car. And I mean, that was fantastic experience in itself. Cool. So, there's all these moments, but seeing when we went to Le Mans, we built a Porsche 911 RSR race car, but we only built half of it, and the other half was a real car.
Nice.
And actually it was a great story, because it came about because we were talking about what are we going to do at Le Mans? Like, how are we going to make this big impact for Lego? And then, like, I think it was like a week later, one of the guys from Porsche phoned up and like, one of our cars just crashed, but only half of it's broken. Can you do anything with it? And we're like, yeah, sure. So straight down the middle, build the other half out of Lego. And so it was a genuine RSL race car on the other half. It was just the other half had been destroyed. So, that sort of thing, and seeing kids just walking around this thing and taking it all in. And yeah, I mean, there's so many moments from that whole time that just, yeah, I still can't believe today that I got to do them. And so, yeah, it was, the whole thing was rewarding. Speed Champions in general was the most rewarding.
What's your favorite Speed Champions set?
Still the McLaren 720S that we did. It was back when Speed Champions wasn't as wide as it is now. So it was 6 wide. They've made them slightly bigger now so that they can get more detail in, which totally makes sense. But the 720S, we developed the 720S early as well. So actually, we got to see the clay model, we got to see them developing the design, and so before a car was even produced, we were developing the Lego model. And then to sort of celebrate car design and kind of my passion for the industry, with all of these sets, you used to get, I think it's changed a bit now, but you used to get a like a supporting play set that goes alongside the car. So this one we did had a little design desk with a drawing board, and we had an original sketch for the 720 on the drawing board. There's a coffee cup and a little model car, and so we created like the designer and the car. So it was a 720S with the designer next to it, and he had his little design set up. So that was, for me, that was kind of it. It was like, celebrating design, and I really hoped that kids would look at that and be like, oh, okay, what's this? They'd look into more about it and try and work out what's car design and how do I get into it, and so try and tell that story with this tiny little set.
And what made you leave?
Lego grew and grew and grew. I mean, it grew so fast that it didn't know what to do with itself, and I think it's still doing that today. But they went through a restructuring, and they realized they kind of had too many people at manager level, and so it was a good opportunity to leave the company and sort of think about what the next step was. But yeah, they just grew so fast that it was they couldn't keep up with themselves at that time. Yeah, and so and like all these companies, you get to us, and Lego's family owned, but it was a corporation, really. I mean, when you, in terms of how it's laid out, how it works, it's the same thing. So yeah.
So you got to that point, and then where did you go?
So I left Lego and decided that, well, now I'm a real niche. I mean, I was a niche before in terms of being a car designer, but now I'm a toy car designer.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, what are you going to do with yourself then? There's only one place to go, and that's Hot Wheels. So I took a break. I mean, I had some time where I was, to sort of just figure all that out and move back as well. Because I mean, at the time I was living in Denmark, so I had to leave Denmark and move back. So I moved back to the UK, and reached out to Hot Wheels and started that whole process. And it was a good few years before I got hired, but I wanted, because for them it's about how does it fit to what they're doing. So reached out to Hot Wheels in the meantime, did a bit of work for in the automotive events world in the UK, did some photography, did all sorts of things. But spent a bit of time. COVID hit, so that was that was a lot of fun. So spent lockdown. I built a camper van like everyone else during lockdown.
Nice.
I built a camper van and went traveling for a year. So I lived a year in a van, just traveling around the UK.
How was that?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, to be able to go and be places rather than just visiting, you can kind of spend as much time as you want there and sort of be there. It's really hard. I still haven't found a way to describe it, because it sounds like a hippie life, and it sounds kind of, there's so many bad sides of it. But for me, I was able to do freelance work on the road as well. So I was working, but just being able to wake up in a new place all the time, at that time was very exciting. I think now I'd be like, well, I don't want to do that. But it's hard to describe, and I still haven't found a way to describe what it is like, but you just kind of feel a bit more like you're connected. This is going to sound so hippie. Well, I'm going to say it. You feel more connected to nature because you're, I don't know. See, difficult to describe.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. There are definitely elements of it that seem really appealing to me. And the less like tie downs you've sort of got, like, okay, I've got like a house and blah, 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 and like all the family and stuff like that. I don't really feel like I can like move, but there's definitely times when I've been doing something or gone somewhere and you're like, if I could stay around here for another week, that'd probably be quite fun.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think that there was a certain amount of freedom to it, but at the same time as the freedom, there was also these, there's a few things that do tie you in and do sort of create like limitations to what you're doing. Obviously you're in a van for a start, so there's a lot of limitations. No, I enjoyed it for the time. I mean, a year was enough. It's something I'm glad I did and took the time to do. It allowed me to connect with myself a little bit and to sort of really assess, okay, what is it that I want to do and where do I want to go next? And during that time, I was in discussions with Hot Wheels, and that's where it started to ramp up. And then they eventually created a role for me, and here I am.
And then, okay, so where did you go? What did you start doing? And you were in the UK at this point. Hot Wheels, not based in the UK.
Yeah. So, so I'd spent a year traveling around in my little van. And then the discussions with Hot Wheels were that, okay, we do need someone like you in the company. How do we work that out? Like, we've got to, get the right role come up. We've got to wait till, there's all sorts of constraints, budgets, and so on. And then eventually, I think I was riding motorbikes in Scotland. So I got a friend who runs a company, Mallee London, and he does a lot of motorbike events, the Great Mallee Rally, the Mallee Mile Festival, things like that. And I was on one of those. We were up in the Highlands riding, and then I got a call and I had my interviews by a castle, by a stream in like the middle of Scotland somewhere. And then was offered the job whilst I was up there. And so I was like, this is amazing. I can't wait. And so I got offered the job whilst up there. It was 6 months later that my visa finally cleared and I could actually move to LA and start working. So it was a complicated process just to get out here. Despite having a job. I mean, this is the thing, if you want to work in the US, it's not just that you have to have a job. You got to have a visa, and that visa doesn't rely on the job, but it does rely on the job, and it's a very complicated thing.
Yeah.
Lots
of forms and headaches, or just like a really long process?
I mean, the visa process is complicated. A lot of forms, you have to have. I mean, I was really lucky. Mattel sponsored that program, so they had lawyers and so on that were working on everything for me. It's a really nice thing to do if you need an ego boost, which is apply for a talent visa for the US, because you have to have all these people write really nice letters about you.
All right, yeah.
Once I'd submitted it, I went through everything and read it again, and I was like, oh no, I am quite good. Yeah, they should definitely let me into the US. Like, there's no reason why. And you're collecting magazine articles and interviews and so on, and you're putting it all together, and it's a proper ego boost. And I think at the time, having been out of the industry for a while, I think I needed it. I was getting to a point where I was like, I don't know if this is, perhaps I'm doing something wrong here. And so reading through all that was good. Yeah.
Yeah, a nice bump. And what projects were you involved in straight away?
I hit the ground running. So I was brought in as the design manager to run the Basics 1/64 scale die-cast cars, which is the $1.20, I think £2. I don't know how much they are in the UK. But the $1 cars that we are known for at Hot Wheels, that was my project to run that team. So yeah, hit the ground running is I still get to design maybe 6 or 7 cars a year, but then mainly managing that design team. And it's a small team; it's not a big team. And but quite quickly ended up. I'm now managing the premium collectible lines, the RLC, the D2C stuff, any diecast cars that you could probably think of outside of the extensions line. That's kind of my responsibility at this point. So not tracks and playsets. We have an amazing team for tracks and playsets. They're so talented, but basically all the diecast cars at 164, and we've got other scales as well.
That's a lot of cars.
Yeah, I think it's about 1,000 and something cars a year that are underneath me at the moment. So luckily I have an amazing team. Yeah, it's a lot. And so, but we have such a cool team, graphics wise, product wise, that are just, so on top of that in terms of design. And so they make my job a hell of a lot easier.
What sort of decisions are you having to make, like whether it's like pushing direction? It's 1,000 cars. Is that 1,000 cars that get produced for a really long time, or does it roll? How does it all work?
Yeah, so I mean, when we're developing new vehicles, yeah, we obviously want that tooling to last as long as possible, and so we have to consider that when we're designing a car. Is we're not going to do a car. We do concept cars every now and then, but we want it to be a production car that's got that longevity that we think people are going to love for years to come. But we do as well, our RLC cars, which is our more collectible lines. We might do one of those where we'll produce the car for a very short period of time, but that's a much higher price point. It's a collectible item, and produced in much lower numbers. So then we can get away with that, and we can do more on trend vehicles as well. So that allows us to do vehicles that perhaps at the moment it's cool. Will it be cool in 10 years time? We don't know. So we can put that in the collectible line, and we can do artist collaborations. Obviously we recently had the Daniel Arsham Hot Wheels collaboration where we did a whole bunch of cars with him. And yeah, so it really varies depending on the line, and that's the great thing, is that now being able to have that variety of sort of work within my team is really fun, because I get to think about all those different parts and be part of those discussions and choose cars. And also, if I think there's a car that's not relevant for here, I'm like, oh, but it will fit over there. So it's quite nice being able to kind of have that range of outlets, I guess, for my.
And are you constantly, is it like part of your role to be sort of researching / visiting, experiencing things?
Yeah, it is, definitely. Yes. Yes, it is for sure. But I think that there's some part of me that still wants to be very much hands-on and be present with the team. Obviously, yes, my role is to be thinking about what brands we should be working with and what vehicles they might have coming. So I think that's the biggest thing for me. I don't want to say it in front of my leadership team, but I don't need to be driving these cars around. It doesn't really matter if it's a whatever seconds around a track. As much as I would love that to be the case, of course. I totally need to be driving these cars on a daily basis.
You need to be able to get a real feeling for how to interpret them in tiny scale.
Yep, exactly. But no, I do not. But what I do need to know is kind of, or in 2 years' time, we've got this new blah 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 supercar with this coming, because we have a lead time of can be 1 to 2 years as well. So if we want to make the biggest impact and to celebrate the car in the best way, sometimes that is coming out at the same time as those cars are launching, because that's when the hype is, and that's when people want to see it, and that's when we want to be as relevant as possible. I think that's the great thing about Hot Wheels, is that we're probably one of the most relevant automotive toy manufacturers, because we have that access. So we are in constant dialogue with these brands, and we're still working on it and trying to improve it. But there's a lot of times where we are launching these cars almost in line with the real car.
And do they just send you the CAD files
Yeah. It's essentially that, but then also, maybe it's visiting them and talking with them about the car, so we get an understanding of what it might be and what it could be, and how we can make that work in the Hot Wheels world.
And if you visit them, are they like, let's say, I don't know, do they generally give you a bit of the tour? They obviously want to do a bit of a promo of their products and blah 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 blah, and then they're like, "Hey, here's a Ferrari on a track."
Yeah. It's one of the side effects, the perks of being there. Yeah. I think we've got such good dialogue now with design houses around the world, that automotive design houses. The Aston project's a really good example of that, where I think they essentially approached us with that one and said, "Is there anything we can do? Like, can we collaborate on this? Do something fun?" And so we worked together. We developed a few different concepts and working with them to do that. And so it's a really weird position to be, but we've sort of got to a point now where we've also spoke to other ones, and I'm not going to name any brands, but we've spoke to other big design houses where they're like, "Yeah, we've got this design of yours," and they're using Hot Wheels to sort of inspire some of the real car design.
That's fun.
Isn't it mad though? I mean, like, it's come full circle where we're inspired by the automotive world, but we've now got such a talented bunch of designers that they're creating stuff that's inspiring the car design world that they were inspired by. So, because we really do. The designers are super talented, and I can't say it enough. My team are amazing, and every day they're sketching and they're designing things, and then I have to like tone them down. I'm like, yeah, but we've got to manufacture this. And so, no, it's so cool to have that, where the manufacturers not only trust us with their data for new vehicles, maybe 2 years ahead of a launch, but they're also asking us to collaborate and to design and or being inspired by our design. So it is amazing. I mean, it's such a great place to be, such a good time to be part of that team.
There's like a tour of competitions, and then the winner's cars get made.
Yeah, the Hot Wheels Legends Tour. So the Hot Wheels Legends Tour is, I think we have more than 20 stops around the world, and everyone can bring their cars along, or enter their car into the competition, depends on where you are. And then it will be entered into first your regional competition, and then the grand competition, where we'll choose a car to become the next Hot Wheels. The Legends Tour, the final is like next week, but the Legends Tour we'll narrow it down to 10 vehicles, and then there's a couple of recorded shows where we will choose our winner. So it's judges such as, we have, like, I think last year was Jay Leno, Larry Chen, and a few Hot Wheels team, and so it's pretty cool. And the great thing about the Legends Tour is that it's so inspiring to see what people are building for real in their garages, and it's not necessarily even that, like, they're not. And these cars as well, they're not like, they're not restoring Ferraris or anything like that. They're creating the most wild concepts, and it's just nice to see them just sort of go all out there and build something that they love. I mean, we've had so many cool entries where, there's the Kevin, the K van, which was a motorcycle powered K van, I think it's Daihatsu, where the motorbike was sort of still inside but connected to the drivetrain, and builds with ice setters turning into hot rods with Harley engines on the side, and it's all sorts of vehicles. It's just so inspiring to see that the automotive world has gone that route. I think we're so lucky to sort of live in this time period where the technology and tools available to someone for their home garage allows them to create basically the same thing as a professional builder if you wanted to. There really is no limit now to what you could do at home in the garage. And also you have all the tools online in terms of learning that. So, I remember my first car, my Mini, and the first time that went wrong, I had no idea how to fix it. There wasn't the internet to look for. I had to find people to help me and phone people and find stuff out and then order something, and then that might not be the right part that turns up when you ordered the part from the catalog. Whereas now, this whole world right at your fingertips will just allow you to just find exactly what you need, all the issues that people have done. How do I do this? And then you can go away and build whatever you want. So I think it is allowing people to be more creative now with the way they're building cars, rather than, previously it was just like, I've just got to restore this car to how the book says because I've only got this book.
Yeah. I need, this person's done it this way.
Yeah.
That's the only way I know. So let's start with that. Whereas, yeah, I think seeing some of the cars in the competition and stuff, you're like, I see all these little crazy little Hot Wheels cars. And in my head, I don't really think of them as like real cars. I know often they're based on a real car, but then seeing the competition, you're like, oh, wow, someone has made that. That is a real car.
Yeah. I think that's one of the great things is that when we're designing as well, we do try to consider that too now. So, I mean, I think one of the things I really try to sort of get into my design team is that, what if this is a real car? Let's inject a certain amount of reality. I mean, we still want to go wild. We still want to be Hot Wheels. It's still got to have that spirit. But how do we ensure it's got sort of authentic automotive style and taste applied to a toaster on wheels?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely lots of cool ones. And so the new one, well, by the time this comes out, it'll be out. So
that's true. Yeah, I think it
will definitely.
So we'll have wrapped up the Legends. So we've wrapped up the Legends Tour this year.
Yeah.
And the winner was great. Yep, definitely a worthy winner. But no, I'm looking forward to next year because I think the one thing is, the big finale and the winner that becomes a Hot Wheels is one thing, but it's what it inspires in everyone else to go out and create. For me, that's what's the most amazing. So being able to then see a new round of the Legends Tour and see all these new vehicles coming that people are sort of bringing out from maybe 6 years, 7 years of building, they've finally finished it and they've had that inspiration to get out there, get it done and bring it along to the Legends Tour. So it's really cool. I mean, and I'm hoping again, like every year the UK really does well. We really represent. So I'm really happy about that that home can bring it because again, it was really good one this year, but the Mini Bentley from the UK was just amazing. And it was this Mini inspired by a Bentley with a big V8 engine in it, no roof. I mean, it's just, and it's perfect. It's everything that a kid would want to do with a Mini. It's that sort of, it's creating a toy in full size.
Yeah.
Or mini size. I guess they're not really full size anyway, but
they're so cool. So cool. And in your own cars, you've got a Model T? Is it a Model T?
Model A. Yeah.
Model A.
Yeah, I have a Ford Model A. Well, I have 2 Ford Model A's at the moment.
Is that required to run one Model A?
Well, no, they don't help each other because one's in Denmark and one's here with me in California. So they're not, it does help a little bit for my sanity more than anything because, so whilst I was in Denmark, I bought a Ford Model A. I've always wanted a hot rod. It was don't tell my Hot Wheels team, but it was a Matchbox hot rod I had as a kid that really, I was like, one day I'm going to have a hot rod. I'm going to have a hot rod. I just loved the exposed wheels. It had, this engine and just then the proportions of, as a car designer, the proportions of a Ford Model A are so good, especially the coupe. Like the way the lines work on that car, for me as a car designer at least, I mean, it's not elegant in any way, but it's just the proportions, the tightness of lines. Every line has a purpose. It goes somewhere. So for me, that was like, that's car design. Maybe it's just because I had the toy. I've just realized it's not actually good car design. I just grew up with the toy.
It's just imprinted.
But no, so the Ford Model A for me is, design icon in itself. Anyway, always wanted a hot rod. And so when I was in Denmark, I finally kind of got to that position. I've had quite a lot of cars, but I finally kind of you know what, I'm going to build a hot rod, because I went to an event in Denmark where these guys were doing traditional hot rod dirt track racing around like a quarry in the middle of nowhere in Denmark. And I was like, this is what hot rodding's about. Just, yeah, taking whatever it is, bolting it together and racing it. So I built a traditional hot rod over there, a 1931 Ford Model A Coupe, which is now known as Old Red, and started racing. And then me and a few friends, well, some friends of mine started a race called Romo Motor Festival, where they do a beach race. So Denmark has these big flat beaches, very similar to Pendine, and was actually where Sir Malcolm Campbell used to test his cars for sort of the land speed records. So they said, look, we need to take racing back to the beach. So they started this beach race, Roma Motor Festival. And I started racing there with my car, and I love it. I mean, it's great. It's like Goodwood Revival goes to the seaside, because we all have to dress in vintage gear. If you go into the pits, you have to be in period clothing. All the cars are pre-war. All the tuning is pre-1948. So there's nothing modern.
Okay, yeah.
Apart from everyone has their phone on them. There's nothing modern within the pit wall, or it's a string around the beach.
Yeah.
And then 20,000 people turn up to the beach to watch it, because it's free. And we're on the beach racing, and you're not allowed within a certain distance, but otherwise we're just racing for free on the beach. Been racing there now 9 years. Been racing that one. So anyway, I can't remember what the original question was, but then I came to California and I was like, oh, I missed my hot rod. And I was like, well, I know how to build them, so I'll build another one. So I've got a 1928 Roadster, also in traditional hot rod style here, because Model A's are great. They're really easy to work on, as well as being absolutely perfectly looking. So I bought another one and I built a traditional Roadster here. And the crazy thing about LA, and this is why I love being out here, like the automotive world is everywhere and where you don't expect it even. It's a short story, I promise. I was walking out of my house, and I lived sort of in like a back house of someone's main house, because it's LA and that's all you can afford out here. So I was walking down the alley out the back, and I walked past this garage, and there's a whole bunch of guys in the garage, and there's a whole bunch of motorcycles dotted around. And I was like, oh, nice bike. And he's like, oh, thank you very much, in perfect British. And I was like, oh. He's like, do you want to have a beer? I was like, yeah, sure. And I started drinking a beer and chatting to these guys. And there was an old boy at the back, and he sat kind of, quietly drinking. So I went and chatted to him, and I was telling him, he was asking me, oh, you like motorbikes, cars? I'm like, yeah, I like all that sort of stuff. I'm like, I'm building a hot rod at the moment, a Ford Model A. He's like, oh, I've got an engine for one of these. And he sort of started explaining this engine. He's like, have you heard of a Riley engine? And I was like, no way. And because I'm a nerd, but a Riley engine is it's not Riley, the British company. It's George Riley, who did like hot rod engines for Model A's in the 30s, 40s, maybe I think even earlier. But he was like the guy to get 100 miles an hour out of a Ford Model A. And he's like, yeah, I've got one of them. I was like, well, that's amazing. One day I could dream of that. He's like, well, do you want it? I'm trying to clear everything out, and offer me the right money, and it's yours. So I now have a Riley racing engine for my Ford Model A.
Nice.
Which turns out was built by the founder of American Racing Wheels, and then tuned by a whole bunch of like very famous tuners in LA, and was originally destined to go in like a drag rail. So it's pretty extreme, but I'm just going to throw it in my Roadster and drive around with my friends. But I'll do some racing with it. But it's just crazy. So it was a long story after all. But it's just crazy to me that LA is that place where, yeah, you can walk down the street and pick up a racing engine for the car you have in your garage.
Yeah,
and take it home.
That is cool.
Yeah,
that is cool.
But yeah, so I got the two Model A's, and then I've still got my Mini as well, which I bought when I was 17. I brought it over here now, so I just imported that last couple of months.
Is that quite an easy process, taking a car across?
It wasn't too bad. The thing is, you've just got to be prepared to spend the money, and that it's worth it. I wouldn't import anything I was trying to make money out of. I imported that car because I can't buy that car. It's my first car, so it's not worth it if you're doing anything other than sentimentality, because I think sentiment's the only thing that's worth spending that money on.
Yeah. And so is that your practical car, the Mini?
Yeah, it's my daily. Yeah.
Nice.
I don't have to go far. And the great thing is that the weather in LA doesn't really take its toll on cars quite like it does in the UK.
Yeah.
The most I have to worry about is a little bit of overheating from time to time, but actually otherwise the car is the same state I left it in the week before.
Yeah, no, I was having a look on Instagram. It's quite cool. It's just a cool vibe. This Model A situation.
I think I knew that coming here. I've been out to LA a few times, and I've made a lot of friends out here, and I realized quite early on that LA is a place I could live. And then when I came out here, it's just next level. I mean, the story with the racing engine down the street from me, 2 blocks from my house, I find an engine like that. It's just everywhere. You drive around the corner, there's something going on all the time. And so you find yourself feeling guilty for not doing stuff. And then you're like, wait, but it doesn't matter because there will be another one next week. There'll be something else. And everyone's just so interesting, and everyone's so interested in you and your story, your car's story. Like, everyone's kind of here to social, because everyone's here in LA to make it, so they have to socialize. And that can be a positive and a negative, but it means that everyone's interested. And so everyone's talking about stuff. They want to find out about you. They want to tell you about themselves. And so it's kind of cool if you get caught up in it, and it's a lot of fun. It can be tiring, but then you can just stop. Like, you can pick and choose what you want to do. You don't have to go to absolutely everything. You don't have to be fully sociable all the time. You can choose that. You can, as long as you don't make yourself feel guilty about it, you can do what you want.
Yeah. I'm conscious that we're about to hit up onto my unfortunate buffer. This is not your fault at all. So I usually wrap these up with 5 questions.
Okay.
5-car garage, unlimited value.
Oh, I really like the McLaren MC12. The McLaren MP12C at the moment.
And that is a shape that it's looking really good now.
Yep. So I think I would add that in there.
So you'd still have your current 2.
I know, this is the problem. I can't sell the Mini, so I have to have the Mini.
Yeah.
I have to have old red, because I think a lot of people would disown me as a friend, as a partner, as a family member if I got rid of old red.
Yeah.
So I have to have old red. So actually, it's a 3-car extra.
3-car extra.
I really want a Plymouth Fury 58 from Christine. So a 1958 Plymouth Fury. Because I want a muscle car, but I kind of want that 50s car at the same time. And the Plymouth Fury is the perfect mashup of a muscle car and a 50s kind of over-the-top styled car. And is Christine in the movie. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think that would itch my muscle car thing at the same time as my 50s car thing. So Plymouth Fury.
Nice.
I've got 1 left. I probably should pick a practical car, right?
You survived without so far.
Well, that's true. My entire life has been a series of non-practical cars. I do get jealous of all these people going to Porsche events and like being able to do Porsche things, and I don't have a Porsche, and I had one years ago, but so maybe I should get a Porsche. I got the McLaren. I got the I like off-roading, so maybe I should choose something for off-road. I wouldn't mind trying out a Grenadier for a while. Like the Ineos.
Yeah.
Grenadier could be fun. Or maybe something a bit more wild. Or a Bronco or something. So it'd be a 4x4.
Some sort of thing, like that.
Yeah, let's not get into details.
That'd work. You can only drive one sporty car for the rest of your life, and you've got like a $5,000 something or else on the side.
I think I'd probably try the 911.
Oh,
something like that, because that kind of does a bit of everything, right?
Does a bit of everything.
Yeah.
And you can always modify it down the line if you want.
Exactly. Then yeah.
Most undervalued car at the moment. What should be worth more?
Oh, what was I looking at the other day? Hang on. Most undervalued car. Well, it depends where you are. But out here in the US, you can pick up like MG midgets, B's, C's, A's, things like that for nearly no money at all. Which just, really surprised me. So like Austin Healey, Sprites and midgets and stuff, all that sort of stuff's like really cheap here. Whereas like my Mini is just crazy money. Whereas I think in the UK, it's almost the opposite way around. But in terms of like, I don't know, because everything seems to be climbing up. When I would have said, because I've always loved the Renault 5, and the Renault 5 for me, like design-wise, is just amazing. And now that's like, you couldn't pick one up if you wanted to, because I think most of them got scrapped, and so those that are left are skyrocketing. I think 944s are pretty undervalued for Porsches. I think that's probably, you'll see a bit of a change with those, but
Most memorable driving trip or journey in less than 3 minutes.
Most memorable is probably I did the Malay Mountain Rally on my motorbike. I don't know if I'm twisting the rules by doing
That's
a motorbike,
all right.
But we did 6 countries in 6 days.
Their trips look sick.
Yeah, we started in Austria and we did every mountain pass all the way. We did Italy, France, and ended in Monaco. And it was just the most memorable thing I've ever done. And I did it on a motorbike too. So I think that's what helped though, because when it was -3 degrees in the morning and then 30 degrees at lunchtime, you felt that. You felt the emotion that goes along with that. The Malay Mountain Rally is the most memorable thing I've ever done.
Marketing, media, photography, and to be honest, the events for that company.
2-man team.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, Malay is just 2 guys, and they do so much. It's amazing. They've got a good team behind them as well, of course, and photographers, like you say, the team of photographers that attend these events, but they are as magical as they look in the photos. Not to talk it up, but like they are as good as they look. They are that good. They are.
I need to make it onto an event at some point. I probably have to get a motorbike first.
Yeah, they're dangerous, but they are fun.
that is my problem. But then again, you do drive around in an old Ford modified, so that's equally, well, not quite equally, a little bit. Is that a little bit sketchy?
The Mini has a full FIA race cage in it.
Yeah.
Which everyone's like, oh, so you did track days then? I'm like, no, I put it in to move to LA. Because the SUVs,
they just drive
even
over.
Normal cars, the window line is above my roof, so no one sees me. Well, luckily it's bright red. I've got white stripes across the hood. I'm doing everything I can to make that car as loud as possible. But I have a full FIA race cage. Otherwise, it's not too bad because everyone's so amused by it. Like it stands out so much that people see it, if that makes sense. You'd have to really not be paying attention to not see, there's too many negatives, to not see a bright red Mini with white stripes like flying around the streets.
And if it's that thing where you always see this video of like a Ram TRX or something that's like, and they're just looking out the dash and you literally could not see. But you would be able to see that there would be a lot of people around that would look at the car and you'd be like, what are they looking at?
I think I'm used to riding my motorbike around to make sure I'm visible too.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking to sort of, okay, am I in the visibility? Am I in everyone's mirrors? Am I where I need to be? But that car, it's pretty sketchy. But like I say, it's got a full race cage. So, I'm basically indestructible at this point.
Yeah, you're completely fine. Right, well, I'm sorry to sort of cut it a little bit short. I say short, it's not even that short, but cut it a little bit. But thanks very much for coming on the podcast.
Lovely chatting with you. I feel like we should do it again. Do you want to do maybe every episode?
Yeah, let's do it every episode like we talked about at the beginning. Yeah.